Good morning, everyone, and thanks for being here today to this workshop on the sea basin dimension of EMFF and EMFAF projects. Now, this workshop is taking place in the framework of the synergies and clustering between maritime project, and this is the fourth workshop that took place this year. So I imagine that most of you are already familiar with the objectives, the overall objectives of our work, with the format of these workshops. For those of you who are not familiar with our project, let me briefly recall what is, in a nutshell, the overarching goal of what we're doing here today. Basically, this Synergies and Clustering project is a contract funded by CNEA and DG MARE, and its ultimate goal is, well, it goes by the name, encouraging and fostering synergies and cooperation and clustering between beneficiaries of EMFF and EMFAF grants, but not only those, also with synergies between beneficiaries, for instance, of other funding programs funded by the EU. Because ultimately, what we want to achieve, what we'd like to achieve ideally, is to increase cooperation to maximize the use of public money on the one hand, and also the long-term and long-lasting impact of grants. And in doing so, we are having a look at past projects and grants funded by the EMFF, trying to understand what projects had a long-lasting impact and somehow managed to live beyond the grant itself. And we'd like to understand the reasons behind their success, and also to highlight best practices. And we'd also like to mainstream these best practices to encourage exchange of these best practices with other projects. So essentially, it's a project about cooperation, fostering cooperation in the maritime domain, but not just that. And the workshop today it focuses on sea basin dimension. And I must say that on behalf of the Synergies and Clustering team, we were a bit worried at the beginning, because the sea basin dimension can be tricky when looking at EMFF projects. Some of them are clearly focused on a sea basin, so that the sea basin dimension is pretty evident, but some others are completely cross sea basins, to the point that the sea basin dimension might seem irrelevant. In fact, after careful and thoughtful brainstorming, we realized that sea basin is still an essential component, and simply you need to frame things in the right way in terms of cooperation. You can cooperate with your neighbors in the same sea basin. You can extend your cooperation at a later stage with other sea basins. And today we're here to discuss how to increase cooperation, to what dimension, when, why, how we can do it. Are we better positioned to cooperate with our neighboring countries, or should we extend our partnerships to other sea basins? We're going to explore several different options throughout this workshop, and the answer, I would say, is still remain to be fully understood. So hopefully, I'm confident that will provide enough food for thought to increase your options for cooperation, and ultimately putting EU money and grants to better use. Now, before we're getting started, because we have a packed agenda and a second session for interaction that is rather long, I'd just like to briefly outline the some basic rules for the workshops. I'm going to be your master of ceremonies today. The basic rules are that, first of all, please make sure that your full name and affiliation are displayed. If you want to change your name, you have to click on the participants button at the bottom. Next, hover your mouse over your name in the participants list, and then click on more and then on rename. So remember, full name and affiliation. This is important, especially for the second session when you need to interact with you, and it's easier if we know who you are. When in the plenary, and the plenary is where we are now, if you want to ask a question to a speaker, please use the chat. There are too many of us. We just can't, allow verbal interaction at this stage, also in the interest of time. So any question, anytime, just use the chat. Either the speaker will answer to you directly, or our team will have a look at your question and we'll pass it on to the speaker. Don't worry, you're going to get a reply, even after the workshop. When in the breakout rooms, don't worry, verbal interaction is highly encouraged. The meeting is being recorded. You had an alert in your registration form, and the recording will be uploaded on the YouTube channel of the project. On the registration form, you could also have a look at data protection notice. Anyway, your data is safe with us, don't worry, and with the European Commission. But if you don't want to appear in the recording for whatever reason, just please make sure your webcam remains turned off throughout the meeting, and your name won't appear anyway, so don't worry, it's just about the webcam. Make sure you attend this breakout session, because the best always comes at last. And for any problem during the meeting, you can send a message to my colleague Marco Guarino or to myself, and yes, I hope that we're going to have a good workshop. Now, without further ado, I would like to leave the floor to the first speaker, who is Patrizia Busolini. And Patrizia works in DG MARE. She's a policy officer in DG MARE, where she deals with sea basin strategies and regional cooperation. So no one's better than her to introduce the workshop and, set the policy landscape and context. Over to you, Patrizia.
Alessandro, thank you very much. Good morning and welcome to all the participants. I see there are already like 50 participants, and I'm sure additional ones will join soon. As indicated by Alessandro, I'm part of the DG MARE unit dealing with sea basin strategies, regional cooperation and maritime security. In particular, I am in charge of the sea basin strategy for the Common Maritime Agenda. Well, I must say that we are really pleased you have organized today this event, because this event is very much important when it comes to support the cooperation among projects. As Alessandro has said, indeed, there are projects that can have a cross basin dimension, others that have a sea basin dimension. But so this is a challenge indeed when it comes to identify which could be the elements that could support cross-fertilization and cooperation. But this is also the added value of the exercise we are doing. Indeed, we have, as you might know, there are 3 sea basin strategies the European Commission, DG MARE, is supporting in the Atlantic, in the Western Mediterranean region, and in the Black Sea. In the Black Sea, as you might imagine, currently the regional activities are suspended for obvious reasons, but national activities continue, and we are looking forward for regional projects to maintain a minimum of regional dynamic of regional cooperation among stakeholders. So as you might know, these sea basin strategies, they all started in different periods, so they are advancing at a different pace, they face different challenges and so forth. But it is true that they all tackle similar priorities when it comes for, I'm making now examples of blue economy sectors, for example, coastal and maritime tourism, green maritime transport, blue skills, maritime clusters, and so forth. But there are also some cross-cutting aspects which are not specifically thematically focused, that are related, for example, to marine spatial planning, just to make an example, or how we finance these sea basin strategies. As you know, sea basin strategies, as the EU macro-regional strategies, they do not have a budget on their own, but they need to identify how the priorities and the goals are financed through the different financial channels that can be EU programs, national programs, and also the cooperation with international donors. So the exercise of aligning all these different funds, it is a common challenge, a common exercise of all these sea basin strategies. And here it comes the importance of the projects and what we are discussing here today, because the projects are an important asset that allow the implementation of the sea basin strategies. I would like just to give you a brief overview on the approach. What are these sea basin strategies? These are regional cooperation framework with a medium long-term perspective, where the involved countries, they do define common priorities, common goals and common priorities that are then implemented also not only at regional level, but also at national level, and where the stakeholders play a key role, because they do need to participate to this process, especially when it comes to identification and to the implementation of projects. So again, we come to the importance of the projects. So this is the reason why the today event is very much important, because it is important to provide to the stakeholders and to support the stakeholders with any possible tool to allow them to meet, to network, to exchange their best practices, not only within the same sea basin, but also across sea basins. This is very important. And this is very important also because in the Western Mediterranean and in the Black Sea, we also work with non-EU countries. So this is also a way to involve non-EU countries, non-EU stakeholders in a concrete process of project implementation. I didn't mention the Atlantic because the Atlantic involves only EU countries. And then another important aspect of project implementation that I would like to highlight here, as I see that Interact is present as well, and they know how all the efforts that we are doing when it comes to embedding the priorities of the sea basin strategies into the new programming period. So not only in all the Interact programs that do have that do partially or completely cover the geography of the sea basin strategies. So since a while now we are cooperating with these programs, but also when it comes of embedding at national level, the priorities of the sea basin strategies into the national and regional programs financed, for example, by the ERDF programs, just to mention one. Because in concrete, all this work will then be translated into projects that will be financed at national and regional and at regional level. Of course, there is, we mentioned now here Interact, but there are a lot of cooperation and exchange that can be done also when it comes to the projects financed by Horizon program, by LIFE programs, and so forth. And I don't mention, of course, the cooperation about among the projects financed by our tool, the EMFF. Voila, so this is what I wanted to highlight. If I need to take an example, a concrete example of a very successful project that has been financed by the EMFF. So it's in past programming period in the Atlantic. It is a project called ASP-BAN. It is a project financing the priorities on ports, gateway, and apps for the blue economy. This has been very successful, and it has been exported in brackets in the other sea basin strategies. So the idea really to provide you with this opportunity of network and exchange of best practice that we are providing to you today is to identify other such cases where best practice project can become really an example to showcase in other sea basins. But not only the importance of today's exercise is also to identify how other projects can match, can respond to the priorities of the different sea basin strategies. And finally, what I would like to highlight is that you might have seen that in spring, we have launched, SINEA has launched terms of reference for the unique assistance mechanism for the sea basin strategies. So we have, let's say, upscaled a bit the approach. Until now, we had 3 sea basin strategies, and I take 3 sea basin strategies assistance mechanisms, and I take the opportunity to thank the colleagues that today will present what it has been done in respective frameworks. So starting from September, October, we should have a unique assistance mechanism for the 3 sea basin strategies. And one of the reasons why we have decided to change, to make this change, it is also to promote cross-fertilization, cooperation, and synergies among sea basins, also when it comes at project level. This is very important. So we are really wishing to make this process of cooperation, exchanges among projects a stable process. Voila. So, and I would like to conclude repeating a bit what Alessandro mentioned at the beginning, meaning that the answer of how this can be done in the best way, we build it together. So it's not that as Commission we have the fully prepared answer. It is something that we need to build with the stakeholders, with the project themselves. So please, during the breakout room, please share your thoughts, your ideas, and that will be very welcome. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Patrizia, and quite I would say a good summary of the policy context. And I particularly liked you stressing the fact that projects are of the essence. And what I hope that our work can contribute to is just designing the best possible framework to foster cooperation and synergies, and ultimately encourage or facilitate project success. And of course, yes, this we should do it all together. And you mentioned that in the future, the assistance mechanisms will be merged, which means there is room for now contribute to designing this framework I've just mentioned. And if we do it together, it will be easier to encourage and facilitate successful projects. But first things first, we're going to have a lot of time in the breakout session to discuss how to improve the future framework. Now let's have a look at what we have today. And what we have today are 3 assistance mechanisms. And I would like to hear from them first, and then we leave the floor to interact. That is, I promise it's going to be a very interesting presentation. And then we're going to break for coffee and then the breakout rooms. So now let's getting started with the first assistance mechanism, and it's the Atlantic assistance mechanism. So I'd like to leave the floor to Mariana Taylor de Jesus from the Atlantic AM team, and over to you, Mariana.
Thank you, Alessandro. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mariana, and I'm currently working as part of the Atlantic Assistance Mechanism, the central team for the implementation of the Atlantic Action Plan. I strongly believe that this workshop is a great opportunity to start giving an overview about the potential synergies that could be developed between sea basins, mainly as regards the projects and the funding opportunities that we can discover to be useful to several projects with one or cross-thematic subjects in the blue economy sector. I will start giving an overview about the Atlantic Basin, our work and priorities, and in the end, my colleagues from the WestMED and Black Sea will share a summary of what we believe that could be improved in order to achieve and to develop this only and unique framework to to increase the synergies and cooperation between projects and sea basins. So moving to the sea basin strategy. So the Atlantic Action Plan 2.0 was set to unlock the potential of blue economy in the Atlantic area, while preserving marine ecosystems and contributing to climate change adoption and mitigation. This upgrade was a result of a review of the first Atlantic Action Plan developed by the European Commission, and an important and relevant fact here, we could achieve over 1,200 new maritime projects with approximately 6 billion euros of investments. This fact was developed between the first year of the implementation of the Atlantic Action Plan and the moment that the European Commission has revised has reviewed the plan, the Atlantic Action Plan, to the 2.0 Atlantic Action Plan. So giving you a brief overview of the Atlantic strategy. So this strategy, and to understand the work that we have been developing, this strategy is divided in 4 interconnected and trans-regional pillars or thematic areas with different challenges and actions to be addressed in the Atlantic area. So to guarantee its implementation, we count with different actors. First, we have the Atlantic Strategy Committee, represented by the 4 national representatives, France, Spain, Ireland and Portugal, with the role of guide and evaluate the strategy implementation. We also have our pillar coordinators, elected experts in fields related with the Atlantic Action Plan and its strategy. So we have the Atlantic ports, the blue skills, marine renewable energy, and also healthy ocean and resilient coasts. We also have, as a part of the assistance mechanism, the national hubs, 1 per pillar, and they are responsible for developing the activities defined to assess the goals of each pillar. Then we have our working groups, at least 5 experts per pillar, and they are parts of the pillar coordinators team in developing activities and also in finds and contribute with some projects, progress and identification. Finally, we have the central team, now represented by PwC, and basically we developed different interaction with all these actors, as well as we have a specific, we will have a specific responsibility to guarantee that funding programs are being disseminated among potential projects and entities, and projects are being identified as well and monitored by a specific team with these roles. So moving forward to the work that we usually develop as assistance mechanism, I will not spend too much time in this slide, but here we have some examples of main areas of action. And I will start with the workshops. The workshops are a great opportunities to bring together Atlantic stakeholders, such as SMEs and experts looking for funding to develop and improve their projects. And it's relevant to mention that following our last year of work, our national hubs and pillar coordinators have working together in organizing events jointly. So we believe that opportunities could increase in a transversal context of discussion. As an example, I would mention the workshop that we had the opportunity to organize in April, where we could join the blue skills thematic in the ports area. So it's an example of a work and an organization of a workshop with different thematics, but with a common goal to discuss and to bring new ideas and new strategy to be followed in the future. Having to this, every activity also considers the relevance of having WestMED stakeholders and Black Sea. So we try to have as much participants with different, not only with different backgrounds, but also that have the possibility to work in different sea basins. Moving to the communication, as regards to communication, I would say that is also part of our work. And here I would like to focus on the effort made in disseminating several funding programs among our social network. Here it's a continuous work that could have a limited impact, mainly because we are disseminating among a limited network, the Atlantic network, let's say, and also has a central team. And as I have mentioned before, the project monitoring and the identification of different projects is something that we carry on during the time that we are working as assistance mechanism, and basically consists in the analysis of the projects with an impact on the Atlantic priorities. And our work is not only to search for new projects, but also analyze and collect the best practices and to understand each EU program is under the development and is financing these specific projects. We also count with the national hubs supporting the work with the national representatives, but also they have a relevant contribution in finding national projects national projects funded by different sources. Moving to the funding opportunities, here focusing on the main available funding opportunities in the Atlantic. I would like to mention that the Atlantic does not have funding on its own. However, several EU programs take into consideration the Atlantic Action Plan 2.0 goals and priorities, such as the example of EMFF, replacement of the EMFF, and also the Interreg and the Horizon Europe. We have selected here the ones that we usually disseminate calls among our network, and also they are programs that we found relevant projects that have been funded by them. On the other side, we have projects identification and the progress. And as I have mentioned before, here we have in one hand the contribution and the effort that pillar coordinators and national hubs develop during the implementation of the Atlantic strategy, finding national funded projects, and continuous supporting in the identification of projects, mainly when we organize and we have the workshops to join different and potential projects beneficiaries, and also other experts from different sea basins. So we also have the contribution of the central team. As I have mentioned, we usually monitor the funding programs available, but also the projects that could represent an example of the implementation of the Atlantic strategy. I think several EU programs take into consideration the Atlantic, but also the WestMED and the Black Sea priorities, which represents an opportunity to achieve individual goals on a common basis. So this is one of the reasons that for us it's very important to have to start this discussion and to have an alignment between all the sea basins. Moving to the best practices that we have selected, as Patrizia mentioned before, the EASME, the Atlantic Smart Ports Blue Acceleration Network, it's a great example of a project that is being extended to other countries, and it's not only focused on the Atlantic environment. So this project is basically to support Atlantic ports to act as ecosystems in order to foster innovation in the blue economy. And for us, it's an example to be followed by the other best practices that we have selected. For example, we have here on the other side the Clean Atlantic from SETMAR, and we'll have the opportunity to have the feedback of the Clean Atlantic responsible to share his perspective and potential improvements to make these projects also present in other sea basins. So we think that the EASME could represent the best practices, the best practice and the best example to be followed by the Safe Wave as well, Clean Atlantic, and MARE for yards. Today we have here, as I was saying, at least two members of the two different Atlantic projects. So they will have the opportunity to share some of their experience in finding and in telling us what could be the best practice to have more time to discussion and to see how can we implement their projects, or how can we cooperate with other similar projects from different sea basins. Considering the time and in order to have the opportunity to focus on an intra-basin discussion, I think I have mentioned all the main topics regarding the Atlantic, and I will let the floor to my colleagues from other sea basins to sum up our main conclusions regarding the framework discussion.
Brilliant, Mariana, thank you very much. And please note that there are 2 questions for you in the chat. Since we are already 10 minutes late, I would invite you to answer via chat so that we can move on with the other presentations. And now from the west to the east. So we have the Black Sea assistance mechanism, and the floor is for Thanos Smanis. Over to you, Thanos.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. Good morning from my side. Thank you, Mariana, for presenting the Atlantic Action Plan. Actually, as already mentioned by Patrizia, projects are really important to create synergies and enhance the sense of maritime community further. So let me go quick in the Black Sea, as I understand that we are a bit late already. The Common Maritime Agenda for the Black Sea is a sea basin initiative that aims at supporting regional cooperation for more sustainable blue economy in the Black Sea. And it is developed in the broader framework of the Black Sea strategy. The Common Maritime Agenda is a unique framework for regional cooperation on the blue economy, and it was endorsed in May 2019 at ministerial level. Talking about synergies, it is important to mention that it is also complemented by its scientific pillar, the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda for the Black Sea, and that it's supported also under DG RTD. The Common Maritime Agenda sets actually 3 goals. The first one is the healthy marine ecosystems. Second one is the innovative blue economy, innovative competitive blue economy. And third one is the investments in the Black Sea. And under these 3 goals, we have 10 priorities that are declined into actions. DG MARE, the Directorate General for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries, accompanies the process as a full member of the steering group, where we had 7 countries. Of course, now with Russia, we are suspending the work with Russia. And while the political coordination is ensured by ministerial meetings. Here I want to say that compared to the other sea basins, the Common Maritime Agenda is shorter in period, is working in a shorter period. It's just working for 2 years, the assistance mechanism, where we have this structure very similar also with the Atlantic, with the difference here that we have both member states, but also neighboring countries. So the setup of the Black Sea Assistance Mechanism, it's compiled by a central team, but has also experts in the ground in each country, our national hubs, which are actually the important, one of the most important pillars of this assistance mechanism, in order to bring stakeholders in collaboration, but also at the same time support the national coordinators for each country. Which are the specific objectives now of the Black Sea Assistance Mechanism? As I said, is to provide the expertise both on to the steering group and its coordinator. We started with we had a rotating coordination, started with Bulgaria in 2020. We moved to Turkey in 2021, and currently is Georgia 2022. So each year we have a rotating coordinator. At the same time, it provides expertise to key public officials and private sector stakeholders in order to enhance and disseminate further the blue economy principle and the CMA priorities. At the same time, under the Black Sea Assistance Mechanism, one of the objectives is to support and monitor the implementation of the Common Maritime Framework. So all these are very crucial when considering the project development, because project development at the end is the core of our work in order to enhance synergies. So one of the most important objectives of the Black Sea Assistance Mechanism is to improve knowledge and assure project development, as I said, in order to improve the capacity of the stakeholders and make and enhance this Black Sea blue economy community, as we can say. At the same time, we are working on the communication, and we are organizing national and regional events, which you will see later on, that are really crucial in order to make easier to have a better collaboration, and at the same time give us the floor in order to enhance the cooperation between the stakeholders. As mentioned before, also from Patrizia, the assistance mechanism doesn't have their own budget for project development, but we are working on identifying funding opportunities through different grants, but at the same time with other IFIs. Very quickly, I don't want to be very exhaustive here. We are looking in the Black Sea grants from the European Maritime Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund. We have the Interreg Next BSB, Horizon project. The big difference is for the Black Sea is the eligibility criteria that we may have between the 2 member states and the other participating countries. I would like here to go a little bit more in detail on how we are trying to identify and develop projects. As I said before, it's really important to consider the regional events, but also at the same time, with the pandemic, all the webinars that we had these years. I'm saying that because these events were very important in order firstly to come up with project ideas and going step by step, identifying funding opportunities, and like that, build on some specific project ideas to materialize in specific projects. So in principle, we have a series of events where we are exchanging with the stakeholders. We come up with project ideas, identifying funding mechanisms, and then gradually involve stakeholders in order to develop specific projects. Very simple, I want to give an example, let's say, of that, because in the last stakeholder conference in November, last November, we came up, the stakeholders came up with a specific idea on accelerating the uptake of innovation for blue entrepreneurship. Afterwards, we had the EMFAF call with a specific topic to boost innovation and digitalization in the blue economy sector. So based on the idea, but at the same time having the correct funding mechanism, we came up with a specific project for bees. So what BISAM did in this process? BISAM supported actually the formulation of the project idea after discussing a lot with the stakeholders, adapting it to the characteristics of the call, of the EMFAF call, and supported the consortium to set up, identifying and discussing between partners in order to justify the project idea and create these synergies between the stakeholders. 4Bs was recently approved, actually started in June. And as you can see, we have partners almost from most of the Black Sea countries, and it is led by the Black Sea Universities Network. I don't want to go to details of these projects, but I want to say here that at the same time, we know that are other stakeholders that are also part of the Black Sea community, and they are also working in the same direction. So it's not just the Black Sea Assistance Mechanism that is doing this project development. So there are other projects that we are in collaboration, we are in very close contact with them. They are building on previous experience, which is really important. And Black Sea Assistance Mechanism is also promoting their efforts, such as is the MINEMI project, the Maritime Innovative Network of Education for Emerging Maritime Issues, that actually built up on previous project idea, the Vasco da Gama, and like that, they came up with another idea, and we as BISAM are promoting a lot their work. Again, here we can see that there are also different countries from Black Sea, but also Greece involved in that. I'm sorry. However, as we discussed, it's not just building synergies on projects in the sea basin. Right now, we are discussing on how to be more synergetic also between the sea basins. And a very good example that the discussion is at the moment very ongoing is on a working group on agricultural heritage. How it started this? Based on the workshops and the events that I described previously, we had a great opportunity in the Black Sea to discuss this specific topic and identify relevant project ideas, which is under the priorities and goals of the Common Maritime Agenda to foster the knowledge of underwater heritage. So there was a concrete idea to collaborate between blue economy stakeholders of the Black Sea, bringing research needs and areas of innovation for business operators, and how to include also local authorities across the region. The result was, after the enhance of the steering group, to set up an informal working group in this area, and we are actually building on that, and in order to cooperate between the countries on this specific matter. However, at the same time, we are in touch with similar bodies and similar stakeholders from the Mediterranean, in order to have and build on transfer of knowledge and have exchanges between experienced partners in order to promote collaboration and transfer this knowledge between the sea basins. What I want to say with that is that it's very important to build the collaboration in the sea basin, in its sea basin, but at the same time take advantage of the experiences of each sea basin and transfer this knowledge also to the other sea basins. That's why I understand also of what Patrizia said, that we are going for a unique assistance mechanism for Atlantic, Black Sea, and WestMED. Thank you from my side. I see Patrizia that maybe wants to interrupt here.
No, I just wanted really very briefly to mention that in the framework of the EMFF call that Thanos has mentioned, there has been also another project that has been approved, which is called Ivano, and is a very interesting project on promoting the cities around the Black Sea as a hub for developing blue entrepreneurship processes. So this is in the Black Sea, it's very innovative, so it's very important. I just wanted to mention that. And also mention with that, saying that, for example, this project was one of let's say, developed its contact and the partnership in a more, let's say, autonomous way without that much support from the assistance mechanism. Here, what we want to mention, it is that the assistance mechanism with their national hubs, of course, they are very close to the stakeholders. So we really, in general, the national hubs, they do a big effort to reach all the stakeholders, but there is also the stakeholders, they need to do their work, they need to be in contact, in touch with the national labs, they need to ask for the support of the national labs in order to be able to touch and to arrive to a bigger network, not only at the national level, but also at regional level and at cross sea basin level, which is still interesting. So this is what I wanted to highlight. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Thanos, thank you, Patrizia. Now, again, in the interest of time, I'll leave the floor to Matteo Bocci to present the WestMED assistance mechanism. Matteo, the floor is yours and you have control over your presentation.
Thank you, Alessandro. So just a brief overview. I mean, the overall approach and structure is similar. So the WestMED strategic initiative is a kind of a policy initiative based on the cooperation between Western country in the Mediterranean from the EU side and the North African side. In that respect, I think that was the first assistance mechanism where non-EU side were involved, which gives a very strong platform also for policy dialogue, which is not the topic of today, but still remain quite interesting also because it activated additional financing streams in countries and but also of course for project support very much. So I go very quickly on this overall approach where there are three strategic objectives and goals: more safety, security, smart and resilient blue economy, and governance. There were an initial long list of 10 priorities, then readapted through the in the very beginning of the support of the assistance mechanism into 6 roadmap priorities that really goes across the board of sectors. And I think there's priority 4 incorporates a lot about the actual sectors: tourism, aquaculture, fisheries, etc. And really, this was an important instrument to support policy dialogue as well, helping really creating a strong sense of belonging between the different countries. And it's now meant to be updated towards the end. I don't think. Okay, thank you. As for the other 2 initiatives, there is a board represented by national coordinators across all countries and supported by the European Commission, where relevant ministry attend. They may range between transport, if they have a specific maritime ministry, etc. And the assistance mechanisms also support the coordination of this steering committee with rotating presidencies, etc. So this is a governing body. And then there's a team, national labs, experts, central team of quite a few people that's really also created an overall community. And each of them, particularly the national lab, are really very much involved, as Patrizia said, in engaging and discussing with local stakeholders, but also receiving a lot of requests for support by stakeholders. So it's basically a network across the Western Mediterranean, which is obviously a portion of the Mediterranean and includes EU and neighboring countries, which also creates some interesting dynamics, sometimes complicated in terms of project support. I'm touching upon that because the map of funding is quite articulated. We, as assistance mechanism, we really look at support, providing information on funding, helping matchmaking for partnership, and we have specific discussion on most relevant sectors in the blue economy. As I was mentioning, this is just a snapshot because the list of funding is quite big across the Mediterranean. What I wanted just to highlight here, which is an important reflection on how to support project and maybe overall synergies. It's really a map, a puzzle of different type of funds. So there are elements of financing that are really focusing on EU countries. There are elements that might include southern partners, but only as associates. There are certain programs like Interreg, EMFF, EMFF, that are really focusing on the MED. The specific cause of EMFF is the only one really addressing the entire Western Mediterranean countries. And then there is the important southern EU support, Interreg Next, that really looks across the board. But that creates an interesting landscape when it comes to support synergies and partnerships. I just try to maybe make a little bit of a reflection on synergies, also building on the previous experience, colleagues in the other sea basins. And there are really, I mean, at least, but mainly 3 levels of synergies that the mechanism operated, or particularly the Western Mediterranean. The first one is really the kind of bottom-up, purely bottom-up approach, like Patrizia was saying, and Mariana and Thanos were saying in the other cases, like really bringing together stakeholders, either by national lab engaging with the stakeholders or receiving call for help and trying to create, and there's an idea, there's a partnership requirement, and they can expand in providing new partners. And every partner, of course, bring the history of its own past projects. So that's a capitalization per se. There's a level of a little bit more top-up support in terms of area where need for development and potential gaps has been identified by the steering group. And that is where ad hoc technical groups are activated, a little bit like in the other 2C basin. Experts are called and ideas are generated, and then we support the partnership. And then there's a third level, which is a bit more ambitious, certainly tapped upon this embedding process, where we as a systems mechanism really help the program to understand the needs of the stakeholders and even maybe build synergetic programs in certain area, for example, as it happened for Interreg in tourism. I go very quickly through these things, but really quick, and then we can discuss. So this is a very short overview, not really the most updated because it continues every time. It's just a few examples of how the project we support fits in the broader goals, the longer and the shorter priorities. But also, as Thanos was saying, there's a whole list of additional projects that are created through the support of the initiative as such. So might not be directly supported by the assistance mechanism, but they benefit of that. Could be itself a synergy or a capitalization of the support that we provide. When we look at the specific project, it's also clear that they range across different sectors. They range across different geographical map, as we say, different source of funding and size of project. Maybe the important element here is that, I mean, the programs, the funds somehow provide a demand for project support in a sense that project adapts to the request of the programs and the eligibility criteria and the award criteria. So it's important that the partnership reflects the requirement. That's why you see that very different type of of partnerships. This is an example. I mentioned this is one of the very many, frankly, but this is one of the first that we did in the very early days of the assistance mechanism after our first stakeholder conference in Alger, 2018. I also mentioned this one because this is one of the examples where some of the projects supported in the Mediterranean can actually fit the priority of other sea basins, like the underwater heritage discussion in the Black Sea. And we're actually working through the cooperation of our Spanish national hub, which also happened to be a national hub for the Atlantic, in try to see how maybe we can create an overall discussion and maybe having a Horizon Europe project on this area, underwater heritage, but by building upon making synergies of the project we supported in our sea base. The level 2 is this technical group, technical support. This was part of the things that the assistance mechanism was called to do. Is based on the decision of the steering group because some topic were identified as important area for support. I touched maybe briefly on the cluster alliance later on in the Medband, but I take the example here of the green shipping. So the technical group are like time-bounded, result-driven, KPI kind of rooted exercise where we bring together experts from each country in the Western Mediterranean. We identify what are really the needs and what are the strategic projects that can be supported, and then we help them to create a partnership. You can just see the quite dense sets of meeting. There was an overall kind of mission vision set up by the members, and then there were a clear action plan where we identified projects. It was very important that per se, this was a way to gather together quite substantial, large network of partnership across the whole sea basin, and all of these partners bring with them a whole range of other projects. So this is really synergetic. What we did there, just as an example, is saying, okay, the experts said that agree that there's a need of certain elements, and these elements came out in a feasibility study and 2 pilot actions that were all integrated in one large project that has been submitted. I think is now under submission for the European African Partnership under Horizon Europe. The third level, and I think I'm exploiting some of the slide that might be presented later on by Interact. I apologize for that. This is purely their slide, but I think it's interesting here to say that when it comes to program, there's a lot also fragmentation because programs are by nature, particularly Interact, by nature very local, and there are maybe bilateral programs across Sicily and Turkey and stuff like that. And what we did as assistance mechanism is getting involved in the programming process, bringing on board the bottom-up understanding that came out from our national hub, but also in discussion with the managing authorities from the central team. And we come out with a sort of a plan and agreement where we help different partners, for example, the Interact program and the different streams in the Interact family, if I can call it like that, to really help them identifying clearly the targets in their terms of reference, maybe to provide a visibility, but also to help to create terms of reference for new programs and calls that are based on the outcome of the discussion of the national hub. I have a last slide, but maybe Patrizia, I see you raise your hand. You want to add something here?
No, Matteo, please finish. It's just a couple. Okay,
no problem. I'm done. I just want to maybe raise a few elements for consideration. And one thing is essential and good to promote synergies. Maybe we should also reflect how to involve more outliers, like those stakeholders, business, research center, authorities that are not so used to deal with the all procedures and requirement of applying for a European project. I'm saying that also mostly because Southern and non-EU partners might be very new to that still, but that might apply also to some relevant EU partners. So maybe in a way, this could be something to be reflected by Interag and the program, but certainly we can, discuss further later on, or even today, whether maybe some criteria for awarding in terms of associates, for example, could reward the fact that there are also newcomers in the overall consortium. There is the data hub, maritime data hub. Many of you might or might not be aware, but it's a centralized data base where all information of projects are there. This has been quite useful for us in picking previous interesting project in certain area. It certainly can be using more also to maybe identify experts for technical groups, etc. In terms of cross-sea basin synergies, and maybe I can mention the ASBAN and MEDBAN translation. I mean, certainly there are potential, and I think cooperating as we're doing already now and these days between assistance mechanism and the Commission and the programs is vital. Also because a lot of funding programs are EU-wide, so you necessarily have to have EU-wide consortium, but also because maybe it's important to create a critical mass. What I just want to say here is that we might want to avoid thinking of replication or expansion of certain projects. It's really developing new things. I'm saying, for example, because in what might seem a transition from ASBAN to MEDBAN, really the two things are different animals, in a sense that MEDBAN came out also from a long discussion that the Mediterranean and the WestMED had on the role of maritime clusters. In whether MEDBAN ASBAN is very focusing on the role of ports, which makes a lot of sense and reflects the two different contexts of the sea basin. So in a sense, there's been a contamination, which maybe is mutual now that MEDBAN is active, but also synergies and translation from one sea basin to the other should really reflect the specificities. Otherwise, it's really not working. So there are two slightly different animals, these ones, but certainly cross-sea basin synergies are vital, as Thanos was mentioning. Last thing, and I'm really done, sorry, Patrizia, is what happened, and maybe the assistance mechanisms in cooperation with the program can help. What to do with those projects that don't get awarded by the program because they're not best of breed, but they're still above the threshold. I'm being a bit technical here, but so it means that they're quite decent or good project ideas, at least. So maybe there could be more further feedback from the program to the assistance mechanism, even just suggesting those projects that have not been awarded to get in contact with the assistance mechanism, so that we can help them making the last mile or maybe creating a broader, different synergy. I'm done here. Thanks a lot, and sorry for Patrizia for letting you stand by.
Thank you, Matteo. No, I just wanted to say something in additional to what you mentioned in your previous slide when you mentioned the cooperation with the Interreg programs. Here, just to mention that this is an overall approach that we have on all the three sea basins. It's not only, as I mentioned at the beginning, is not only an approach that is reflected in the WestMED, we have it also in, of course, in the Black Sea and the Atlantic. So the assistance mechanism does this technical work under the coordination of DG MARE, and of course we do it in coordination with DG Regio, because it is Regio that is the owner, let's say, of the Interreg programs. Voila, I wanted to mention that, and also to mention that in the Mediterranean, of course, in the WestMED, we try to set links also with the macro-regional strategy EU-SER, which has a specific pillar on blue growth. So this is a work in progress, but we also cooperate a lot with the Union for the Mediterranean. As you know, they have a ministerial declaration which is being implemented on the blue economy. So you see in the Mediterranean, especially in addition to the a number of challenges of putting all the financial possibilities in a coherent framework, we also need to tap into these potentialities that all these synergies can offer. It's not easy, as Matteo said, but this is also the objective of today's meeting, to see how the projects coming from different experience can also facilitate these synergies. Voila, thank you.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, the thing I presented, of course, reflect the WestMED, but also build upon the discussion we're having with other sea basin. And really, yes, the idea is to have an overall approach on that.
Well, thank you very much. And now it's time for the last presentation before the coffee break and the breakout session. And now it's the turn of Interact. And I told you this was going to be interesting for two reasons. Well, first of all, because at Interact, they've been progressing this framework of cooperation and capitalization for quite some time. So in a sense, we can learn from them. And the second reason is that Ivano will also present examples from not necessarily maritime sectors, which I think is very interesting because our project is called Synergies and Clustering between Maritime Projects. But remember, the most important words are synergies and clustering. So of course, we work in the maritime domain with a small community, but cooperation is transboundary by definition. So it's very interesting to benchmark also what other sectors are doing. We're awfully late, so Ivano, please try your best, and the floor is yours. And you have control over your presentation, so please.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. Thank you very much, the MARE Cinea, for inviting us. It's a pleasure to share what we have learned. Actually, I take stock of what also Patrizia and the other colleagues said before. Basically, what I would like to share today with you, it's a bit our experience, because we learned, especially from a cohesion policy reform 2014-2020, where actually we as Interreg, for the ones who don't know, Interact, we are a supporting program to all Interreg programs concerning their implementation, and also in the new framework 21-27 of the capitalization of the results, because we learned to do so, because in 2014-2020, when the discussions for the new cohesion policy were going up, the policy was reformed in order to give an increased enhanced added value to these programs for a few reasons. First of all, there was the introduction of a few new concepts in the regulation, such as the place-based approach and the focus on results principles that we can find actually in the Barca report of 2009. As well as a new thematic concentration principle that was moving actually to create, first of all, a reduced number of goals, so only 2 goals for the cohesion policy, but a common set of 11 thematic objectives that was at least common and shared among all the European Union cohesion policy programs, and in line, of course, with the EU strategies and policies. We were already at the 4th generation of Interreg programs, so almost 25 years of implementation of, so then thousands of funded projects on several topics that you can find some ideas, or to have a wider information on the database keep.eu. And of course, this new programming period coming, so the 2014-2020 at that moment, plus the further one, foresaw actually a reduction of the budget, or at least a reduction in contributions to the programs. So as a final conclusion, we were the Interreg programs were, let's say, somehow obliged to have an inner reflection on improving their efficiency and enhance their results, especially for more place-based and territorial dimension activities really linked to the added value of cooperation. So this was basically the starting point of what we learned. And so a few programs started really with some, creating some methodology to make projects create synergies and really don't start from the scratch, starting from what was already there, what was already financed in the previous programming period, as I said, almost 4th generation of programs and projects. So really to take stock. We in Interact, we started really understanding how this was going to work, this methodology, and we clustered them basically in 3 big let's say categories you can see on this slide. Basically, we had programs who started creating some kind of common repository tools, either using the KEEP database that is implemented by us and also reflects, let's say, basic data and information on the projects financed by all the programs since 2000, and the identification also of possible results, achievements to be shared with other, let's say, projects, with new projects, or with other, let's say, communities. Second category, actually, the is very interesting also in terms of what we are discussing here today, was the identification of the opportunity to create synergies among projects, not only in Interreg, but also bringing together at a territorial stage for a more place-based approach and projects, experiences from other funding sources. So some programs started with call for proposals dedicated to specific capitalization projects or modules, and others created, let's say, clusters or communities really aimed at understanding what was the policy contribution, the policy recommendation useful to improve a certain, let's say, problem that was tackling the cooperation area of a given program. So really there was this opening up either to what was there, but also to share what the projects were producing with other stakeholders outside the Interreg bubble. And then the third category was the real concrete transfer of policy tools. As I told you, Interreg, it's about, let's say, testing common solution and defining common solution in a given cooperation area. So the transfer into policy tools, the transfer, the mainstreaming to mainstream policies implemented by regional, local, or supranational level, with the creation of community of practices with, let's say, projects givers, so who actually had some interesting practice, let's say good practices, and let's say possible takers as policymakers or wider, let's say, interaction with stakeholders, etc. And this was also done through the creation of specific platform for dialogue, exchange, and let's say communication about the results of Interreg projects. So basically these were the main three, let's say, layers of complexity and categories. The Interreg programs worked all over the 2014-2020 programming period. And here this slide just for you to understand that what we started was a capitalization approach overall, and as many others already said, Matteo, Bocci, and many others before me in this session, capitalization was really, from our point of view in Interreg, but also together with the other programs, understood as an inner gathering process for analyzing what we have, the capital, so the experiences and results the Interreg programs are producing and the projects are implementing. And in a way to understand also how to better exploit them in terms of, let's say, counseling, synergies, reuse, transfer, impact evaluation, lobbying, and of course, communication and visibility. So this was how we all conceived together in Interreg capitalization. Now the overall methodology is available. If you want more information, just go on our website. I will now quickly focus on what is actually the next step. So now we are working really on, let's say, the further project chain concept and results exploitation. So actually going out from the Interreg bubble, and with this project chain, let's say, concept, we are really working together with the program to sell out what is already ready, studied, developed, tested in Interreg to other funds. Especially in this sense, we hope and we actually see opportunities that maybe could also be interesting for you, but many, especially I saw in the presentation from the Atlantic area, I mean, it should be really based on the idea of a project chain. So what we have is not only linked to the funding instrument or to the funding, let's say, framework we are dealing with, but also it could be linked to other priority, to a wider policy framework, etc., and also other possible funding for the sustainability and, let's say, enhancement of what we have already, let's say, started in Interreg. And for this, we can target a lot of fundings from the EASME, direct management, the European Investment Bank, and of course, why not the macro regional and sea basin strategies, especially with the work of embedding that it has been already mentioned before me. And just to let you know, and as inspiration, where are we now landing? So as already mentioned, some programs are already working together to establish informal, let's say, platforms for exchanges at the moment, where actually projects and as well the program stakeholders can talk each other to really foster, create this common environment for synergies, where actually Interreg projects are meant to contribute to their program area situation, but of course learning and bringing experiences from others, but also let's say, transferring their experiences to others. In this case, also, the sea basin dimension reflects a wider, interesting dimension of interaction, synergies, and cooperation. And in this sense, many programs or area, in this case, here represented to the USAIR and the USBSR, let's say, approach for synergies and coordination, and the Mediterranean area coordination mechanism. These are, let's say, different approaches with a common structure that you can see in the middle of this slide. Basically, either if we tackle from the point of view of the programs, or either if we tackle from the point of view of the macro-regional or sea basin strategies, there is a common will to establish a governance structure where actually there is the official coordination endeavor, and then together with the identification of what are the priorities or the thematic alignment and identification of results and topics that could be interesting to the strategies, actually programs are establishing either the flagship or the contribution to the flagship projects or pilots on common topics in order to present concretely how Interreg is directly contributing to the realization, to the implementation of these strategies. Of course, now we are facing a specific moment where all these programs have the theory clear, but they have to really put it into practice, and actually Interreg programs are moving towards a kind of reinforced tools with common criteria or possible synchronized calls on specific topics. I mentioned, for example, in the case of the Med area coordination mechanism, the sustainable tourism. And of course, in this sense, the objective is to have a better impact and, you know, better also expected outcomes in sense of improved coherent and more coherent projects for a wider cooperation area. So not only, for example, in the case of the Mediterranean area coordination mechanism, only in cross-border, but something, a specific activity that is led at cross-border level is then linked to other activities actually implemented in the transnational programs or in the ENI or new instrument in the Interreg Next programs, as we saw as well in the presentation of the WestMED. So as you can see, the opportunities are there, and Interreg programs are questioning how to make it work in a coherent way. And we as Interreg, we're trying to support as much as possible with the knowledge we have already, you know, gathered from themselves as well in the past programming period about this capitalization. What we will do, we'll try to produce tools and opportunities to exchange on synergies and relevant projects. And step by step, we will also support in the programs putting into practice these activities. Just a quick slide for you to see two concrete examples of what could be done with this capitalization of Interreg results. The FARO for MPA's project. It's a capitalization project of the Interreg Med. Actually, this project was really seeking for the interactions in marine sectors and environment based on some existing, let's say, guidelines that were already developed in previous projects. So the aim of this one was really to put these guidelines together to find the common points and actually to further diffuse and transfer these guidelines to other sectors of the, let's say, blue economy. The project wanted also to gather partners of diverse competencies from ministries, agency, and also specific organization in the private sectors. Many of them already involved in previous patterns, really to share the experience of the previous project and to open up to, let's say, missing gaps or still gaps to be filled with specific activities. Of course, the main outcomes were the definition of baselines and the diffusion of this recommendation on the necessary practical collaboration between the MPAs and the maritime sectors and representatives. So really, they wanted really to fill in this gap. Of course, as main outcome, new communication and capitalization tools, really to benchmark the tools and the experiences that were there, and especially they created a common network and capacity building for the involved, let's say, partners and as well stakeholders in the project. And another one, as Alessandro mentioned before, it's coming from the Interreg Northwest Europe. It's a program with no concrete, let's say, reference of a sea basin strategy, but in this case, they they really work on the peat dimension and the reduction of emissions. And the project developed a uniform methodology for the assessment of the greenhouse gas emissions in the peatlands, and actually to see how this could have been widely, let's say, exploitable and applicable to other territories of the cooperation area. Actually, this project was building from a previous project, a very small and limited one in terms of partners and territories. And what they wanted to do was also to involve farmers and farmers organization from other countries and from other, let's say, territories in the same cooperation area. So really to expand the model and the, let's say, acquis of what they did in the previous project. So they defined a management and decision to support tool and a set of socioeconomic models to understand what were the best option for peatland restoration, carbon storage, and reduction of emissions. And in this case, they managed with specific communication campaigns, specific policy meeting, and specific, let's say, also work activities with the organizations of farmers and owners to find out new partners, of course, to restore then with some specific pilot activities, the carbon storage capacity of some peatlands, and of course, to expand this model in 2 new regions, in UK and Ireland. And in this sense, also, they managed to reduce even more with the improvement of the current territories already involved, plus the extension to the new partners, to reduce quite significantly the emissions for the whole cooperation area. So as you can see, these capitalization spirits really can support a wider extension of what is already available. So I leave you with this reflection. And of course, if Interact is there, if anything is needed in terms of, benchmarking the experiences or exchange on these specific, let's say, methods we already have studied. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ivano. And before the coffee break, I see that Patrizia has her hand raised. Please, very quickly, as we ridiculously late now.
I will be very quick, Alessandro. Thank you to Ivano. Ivano is a very experienced colleague on capitalization. I think he's working for the past 10 years in capitalization in Interact programs. So I really think we need to build his knowledge and experience. I wanted to mention maybe, Ivano, that the capitalization should also include the policy feedback. I mean, the input that the project's results, the project can give to the policy level. No, how the results coming from the project can feed the policy level, because this is something very important, crucial, that we have in mind in the framework of the implementation of the sea basin strategies, because we do have all these projects coming from different funds in implementation, that at a certain point they need to feed the policy level where the countries identified and take decision on goals, priorities. And also this is a feedback also for the programs, because the programs decide where priorities to finance, but to decide which priority are financed, the input from the stakeholders, for the bottom-up stakeholders, is crucial, because this is at the end of the day what a place-based approach means. So I wanted to highlight that to the colleagues that are online and listening, that this is an element, an additional element, why for us projects are key importance, why synergies and complementarities and cooperation is key importance, because the outcomes of this cooperation will fit the policy level of the sea basin strategies, that in turn will reflect the needs of the project, the needs of the stakeholders. Voila, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Patrizia. Indeed, this is the next step, and actually, we hope also the programs and project will do this as soon as possible. Thank you. So I leave you, and I still be here for some question if needed. Thank you.
We're exactly 30 minutes late, and there's still another session to go, but don't worry, there's a secret plan to finish on time, or at the latest 5 minutes later than expected. So I think we all deserve a coffee break, and I am inclined to leave the original 15 minutes planned, which means we reconvene here at 11:40 sharp. So enjoy your coffee, but please be back, because the second session is gonna be lots of fun. Okay, enjoy your coffee now. 11:40, and we're still running those 30 minutes late. Still, it's important that we leave enough room for discussion. I will probably end this meeting at 1:05. So now it's time for the breakout rooms. And the breakout rooms, basically, this means that we're going to split you into rooms. One is for projects more focused on research and innovation, and the other one is for projects that are working more on cooperation. We assigned each of you to a room based on what you declared on your registration form, and we also try to strike a good balance in terms of sea basin, sector, and type of participants. You'll see that we have a diversified range of participants. We have project beneficiaries, we have people from the Commission and its agencies, we have people from the assistance mechanisms teams, and also other people. So the idea is to jumpstart a good brainstorming session, because so far we've heard it from the point of view of the policymakers and the contractors managing the assistance mechanisms. Now it's time for some group discussion to understand how we can better progress this framework to encourage cooperation and synergies within and between sea basins. Yes, we're going to have more than an hour to discuss, and our moderators and facilitators will give you some guidelines for discussion, but we'd also like to keep it a bit of free form, because interaction is key. So don't be shy and just enjoy this breakout session. I would ask Anya now to start the breakout rooms, and each of you will be redirected automatically to a breakout room. It's possible that we got something wrong because many people signed up at the very last minute. Some people didn't show up. You can send a message and ask one of us, myself or my colleague Marco Guarino, to be reassigned to another room. Okay, please, Anya, go ahead with the breakout rooms.
Okay, so I think everyone's back now. Yeah, we'll need to close the workshop on time, no longer than 5 minutes later than planned. So let's have a look at the main takeaways from the breakout rooms. And I would start with Anya and the room on cooperation. So please feel free to share your Jamboard if needed.
No, well, we don't have a lot of sticky notes on Jamboard because, well, it was more a free discussion, but it was very interesting, even though we had only a few beneficiaries that was familiar with the assistance mechanism. But even more, I hope that it was interesting for others to discover how they can benefit from assistance mechanism work. So Thanos was talking about importance of the assistance mechanism in matchmaking and creating synergies, how to capitalize on previous projects. And well, he explained how to contact them, and how to discuss with national hubs, and explained that assistance mechanism, it not serves only to promote projects, but first of all, they help to build on experience of previous projects. As far as the recommendations for future are concerned, it was recommended to interact more with the Black Sea Commission and Permanent Secretariat, as the Black Sea has good connection with the Black Sea scientific community, and to think more about the results and impact that project generate, not only to promote project work developed during the project, but the results and the impact. As far as the synergies with other projects are concerned, seeing that not all beneficiaries were familiar with assistance mechanism and have experience, we don't have a lot of examples of synergies. But Marisa from SETMAR, as an example, gave Clean Atlantic and Ocean Wise. They found out that there had similar stakeholders, so they try to use a similar mechanism to contact stakeholders and gather informations. So they didn't develop work together, but they used the same mechanism. So the Synergies was created in this way. About support that can the European Commission provide to foster synergies, it was suggested to continue with stakeholder meetings. Meetings are very important because, well, they give a room to create synergies and to talk with each other, to organize working groups on specific topics. It was said that Visual Knowledge Center already exists for Black Sea, and well, tools like platforms would also help. Moving to the next question on skill gaps and challenges that are hampering growth and synergies in maritime domain. It was highlighted that there's a need to reinforce capability to transfer knowledge and foster communication. The communication is the clue to good collaboration. We talked also about the availability of maritime professionals who are already part of the blue economy transition. There is a gap between, on the one side, we have professionals that are already working on the sea, and on the other side, we have people that are studying. So there should be a way that they can interface and react with each other. And it should be done on EU level because, the common way on EU level is very important because all sea basins are facing similar difficulties and challenges. And moreover, some should be find a mechanism to approach maritime professionals like fishermen. They are very busy, their agenda are full, so there should be a bottom-up approach to organize events with them. We should adjust our agenda to their agenda, to have them on board and to make them participate in different meetings and workshops. As far as the future of the sector is concerned, we talked about two examples, marine litter and the fisheries sector. In marine litter, there is still a lot of room for research. And it also should be, the work should be organized on the EU level because they're facing common challenges, and there is a need to exchange good practices and lessons learned between different sea basins. Talking about fisheries sector, the fisheries sector is also facing a lot of challenges, like there's not enough workforce, and it also was said that it should be organized at EU rather than at sea basin level. And the last topic, how and to what extent a quadruple helix framework can benefit from cross-sea basin cooperation. Well, first of all, it should be noted that it's difficult to get four pillars work together, and to be efficient, you need to have a quadruple helix work together first of all. So it's the first point where you should start your work. And of course, it's important to involve policy member and industry from the very beginning of each the activity. And there are also a lot of barriers, like language barrier, that should be overcome. Yes, and that's all from my side.
Yeah, splendid. You certainly didn't get bored in your room. And Flavia, your turn now.
Yes, yes. I would like to share jumbo that we filled, because I think that it could be really interesting to just grasp a couple of concepts that emerged. So, yes, I will share my screen. So, okay, here we are. Should be able to see the screen.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. So the first question, as you can notice, this was about assistance mechanisms and sea-basin corporations. So the main topic that emerged from this question was the possibility or the opportunity to have national hubs that could concentrate the needs of each country in our basin strategy. We had several examples of national hubs, both in France and Romania, and actually they worked really well, not of course forgetting the sea basin dimension. And of course, because as they insist in national dynamics, they are more close to stakeholder involvement in the national countries. But we saw a couple of examples of how from national mechanisms, from national level, we passed to information cooperation throughout the cooperation between and among national hubs that really worked in the past assistance mechanism system. What can be improved? Yes, be sure that the involvement of non-EU and it means about South and Eastern partners could be improved, of course, because we are talking about sea basin dimension. So we have not to forget that we have to deal with the neighbor countries on a daily basis. We have just a recommendation for the future that is on capacity building. That of course we talked of capacity building and skill gaps in 14 question, but it's important to force the capacity building among and between sea basin in order to be competitive. And I'd like to pass to the second. Yeah, the second.
Sorry, try and be as quick as possible. I know it's not your fault, but you're the last speaker, so the burden is on you now. Please try and be as fast as you can.
Okay. So I will pass really fast on this Synergies without project dimension that was actually the slide that simulated the discussion mass. So we had a big example from the Esteban Camacho that showed a synergy between renewable energy sector and agriculture sector. So it means that even this kind of cooperation could be cross-sectorally, and Matteo Bocci suggested from the assistance mechanism suggested that it could be not only cross-sectoral between maritime domains, but in between maritime and non-maritime domain as well. We have the big example of the tourism that could be cooperate with marine and maritime domains. As far as the support that European Commission could provide, we can talk about supporting communication and dissemination activities, and to foster the support to national hubs. Of course, we had the representative of both SNEA European Commission that presented some tools that the European Commission have has already put in place that could be mentioned, like all the cooperation and support activities from the Starfish mission and the smart specialization platform for interregional cooperation for blue economy. I'm trying to go as fast as I can, so I will here I have a big sticky note that I'd like to highlight as for the skill gaps and challenges. Participants think that the sea-basin dimension should support throughout this stakeholder involvement, the cooperation, the uptake of new patents, maybe even the newcomers to the funding instruments that could be fostered. And it could be done between this Synergies project that actually insists in a local dimension. So I will go to the last one, and we had two big examples of the sectors. As for shipping, the representatives think that the green marine fuels, of course, and the energy transitions, it's the future for shippings. And of course, we have not to limit the cooperation and the progress into our field in blue economy, but cross cooperation among different sectors when it comes to technology is also essential. So it's done from my room. I hope that I stayed in my time. Hope so.
Okay, thank you very much. And yes, please don't forget that all of this will be available in a workshop report. In a workshop report that we'll send to all attendees in a couple of weeks. Also, the recording on the workshop will be available together with the slides with the presentation. So the feedback can be further expanded in the report. I'd also like to tell you to have a look at the chat, because I left a link for a survey to rate your satisfaction with our workshop. That's very important to us. The survey is anonymous. You may or may not leave your name, but please leave your honest feedback, because it's very important. Don't be afraid to be ruthless, have no mercy. For us, it's quite important to understand how we can improve the format of these workshops, because there are 6 more to do before the end of this project. And now I'd like to leave the floor to CINEA, and we have Charlotte Jagot that is following the project on behalf of CINEA. So Charlotte, over to you, please.
Thank you, Alessandro, all colleagues who have joined today, stakeholders, beneficiaries, colleagues from other services, and obviously the assistance mechanism representative. I think it was a very interesting workshop, and we saw, at least in the breakout room that some beneficiaries were not familiar with the assistance mechanism. So I think it was also a very good workshop to introduce the work of the assistance mechanism and to have a wider reach, and also to exchange, good examples of synergies and practices and examples from projects who have benefited from the assistance mechanism and who could share their positive experience in terms of how it supported the assistance mechanism. So I put the links in the chat also for the assistance mechanism. You can also follow them on social media, potentially if the colleagues can put, or in the report, you will add the necessary account. As Patrizia said in the beginning, it is a period which is a bit of a transition, and this workshop was very good for that, because there will be indeed a merging of the 3 assistance mechanisms. So this should be even more, this should make things even more easier and more efficient, and easier for stakeholders to reach out to the assistance mechanism. So that's it. We will reflect also on all the messages from the breakout rooms of what we can do, the Commission and CINEA, to further support the synergies and Voila, thank you for all of you who have been courageously staying in this meeting, and congratulations to you, Alessandro, for being the master of time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I said 9 minutes late is acceptable, I guess. Yeah, I know that this is lunchtime, so I'm inclined to close this meeting as soon as possible. Still, maybe somebody else would like to leave a closing message. If there's anything else you would like to raise, or we can end here. I think everyone's hungry because I don't see any hands raised. Thank you, Marisa. And yeah, I mean, don't forget the survey, please. Otherwise, I will be spamming your mailbox for weeks. I'm joking. No, but please, it's really, your feedback is important. For those of you who have attended all of our workshops, you may have noticed that we have slightly changed and improved the format time after time based on the feedback you give us. So please don't hesitate to share your thoughts with us. Thank you very much for staying this long. Thank you, Commission and CINEA for funding the project, but above all, thank you to all the beneficiaries who attended this workshop. Until next time.
Bye. Thank you.